Wysteria, energy, twister. Hello everyone, welcome back to the wonderful world of fairies. We're going to continue with our bees. We're now on the ballybog, but it has variations of names, so it's also called a bugaboo, a boggin, a boggy, a boogle, a mudbog, and peat fairies. Living in peat bogs and mud holes throughout England, Ireland, and Wales, the ill-tempered ballybogs were described as mud-covered, round-bodied fae. They had no necks, but long and spindly arms and legs. Believed by some to be the guardians of the peat bogs, the ballybogs communicated by use of grunts and slobbering sounds. Agile and quick-tempered, the ballybogs were said to fixate on people who were guilty of crimes or lazy, and would lead them astray while crossing the bogs. Balor, also known as Bala, Balio, Balamak Doit, Balor of the Evil Eye, Balrog, Balroth, Balur, Bola, and Re Balor. The king of the Fomorian, Balor was described as having only one huge leg and a supernatural eye. When he was young, Balor learned over a cauldron his father's druids were concocting a potion in. The fumes rose up and settled in his eye, inadvertently giving him the power to kill hundreds at a glance. He, his wife, Keflen, lived on Tory Island, in a castle on Tor Moor located 9 miles northwest of Ireland. According to legend, a prophecy declared his grandson would one day kill him, so Balor locked his daughter, Etheline, up in a castle tower. In spite of this precaution, the hero Cain, dressed as an old crone, made his way into the tower and fathered a child they named Lou. When Balor discovered this, he threw the infant in the sea, but it survived and grew to slay his grandfather by use of a sling. Balde. In Greek mythology, Balde was the nymph of Crete, Greece. Bamapama, as variation of Crazy Man, so the Bamapama is also known as Crazy Man. In the folklore of the Mergin people from Arnhem, Austria, Bamapama, a trickster, was well known for his ability for causing bitterness, conflicts, hostility, and otherwise stirring up trouble between humans by violating tribal taboos, such as incest. In one popular story, he raped and killed his own sister. When his crime was discovered, he was stoned and became mad, spearing dogs and vegetables. It's an interesting tale. Ban Noama, also known as Bana Noama. The elusive Ban Naoma, woman of the well, was a oracular fairy spirit associated with a sacred well known as Toba Kilningrena, well of the font of the sun, located in Cork County, Ireland. Typically, this fairy chose to remain invisible. When she manifested, she did so in the form of a trout. The Ban Ni Shane washerwoman, it's like the Biani and the Bianihi. It's kind of the same, the Nihig, many names for it, but it's Celtic, Scottish folklore, meaning little washer. A female fairy spirit that forewarned of doomed, described as looking like an old woman with one nostril, protruding teeth, and webbed feet. She was seen at fords, washing the blood-soaked clothes of those slain in battle. Death or some sort of a disaster was imminent for anyone who saw her, unless they could catch her before she fled. If caught, she would give up the name of the fated person and grant her captor 3 wishes. Baneya, also called Banika. In northern Russian folklore, the Baneya was the wife of the evil spirit of the bathhouse Banik. Then we move on to Banik, also known as Bayanik and Bayanushko. In northern Russian folklore, Banik was the evil spirit of the bathhouse. He was said to have the ability to predict the future. He looked like a wizened old man with white hair and a beard, but would sometimes shapeshift to look like a family member. His wife, of course, was Benaya. The bathhouse traditionally was set some distance away from the main house, essentially a sauna with an outer changing room and an inner steaming room. This outbuilding was seen as an unclean place where evil spirits gathered. However, there were also places where women gave birth, and the art of divination was practiced. Banik was seldom alone in the bathhouse, and he would invite other fairies to join him to partake in the sauna. To ensure he and his company were not disturbed at all, religious jewellery and belts were removed before entering. Christian imagery was not hung inside. Boisterous activity, loud talking and singing was also forbidden. To guarantee Banik was appeased, the third or fourth turn of steam was his alone to enjoy. During this time, other fairies, demons, and spirits may be invited to join him. And as a final precaution, slam offerings of fir branches, soap, and water would be left for Banik as a thank you. In sub-regions, it was believed Banik welcomed guests into the bathhouse, and only after there was a birth in the family did he truly settle down and move into the bathhouse permanently. If a bather wanted a divination, he could expose his naked back to the outside of the bathhouse. If he was reading, like a divination, if he was reading the future, basically could gently touch their spine. And if it was negative, he would scratch them. And if it was positive, it was a gentle touch. Banshee. Now, the Banshee has many, many names we're not going to go into because I think we all know that she's a lady of death. But she's also been known actually as the spirit of air. She's had many, many names. She's Irish folklore, and the Banshee was originally a singular entity, an ancestral spirit wailing to announce an upcoming death for one of the five major families, the Kavanaghs, the O'Briens, the O'Connors, the O'Gradys, and the O'Neills. In modern times, it is still believed the mournful cry of a banshee can still be heard. It's considered to be a death omen. Those who hear it will know someone who will die the following night. When a chorus of banshees gather and wail together, it's said someone holy or great is going to die. Seldom seen, the banshee appeared naked when washing shrouds at the river bank, her long, pendulous breasts getting in the way. When not at the river, it was hunting in the hills near lakes and running water for young men, wearing a grey cloak and a green gown, its long white hair worn loose, let to blow in the wind. If it could, a banshee led its victim to a secluded place and drained him of blood. If you caught a glimpse of a banshee and it was washing shrouds, it was advised not to run from it. Rather wait quietly until it slings its breast over its shoulder and carefully sneak up behind it. Then place one of its nipples in your mouth and pretend you are nursing from it. As soon as you are caught, declare the banshee it is your foster mother. Should it accept you as its foster child, it will answer any question you have. A far less intimate way of gaining information from a banshee is to capture it and threaten it with a sword at point. Should you happen to come upon a banshee while washing a shirt at the river, and it sees you before you act, it may speak, saying it is washing the shirt of an enemy. Name an enemy of yours aloud, and then do not try to stop it from finishing its tasks, or else the person you named will most certainly die. If you do not name an enemy for it, the banshee will attack and drain you of your blood. Wow. Bar. Bar is a beautiful water spirit from Scandinavian lore. Bar became the wife of Ogier, the Dane who went to become the king of the sea because of a love for him. Bar was said to actively seek humans to pull beneath the water's surface to drown, which she buried them on the bottom of the ocean's floor. The Barbigesi. The Barbigesi were a small gnome-like race of fairies living in the Alps between France and Switzerland. Their name was likely a corruption of the French word barbe glacée, translated to mean frozen beards. They had overly large feet, allowing them to ski over snow easily. They also had the ability to completely cover themselves up with snow and disappear within moments. They were described as having long and thick frozen hair, resembling icicles. The Barbagazi communicated to one another over long distances by use of an eerie hooting, oftentimes mistaken as the wind whistling through the mountain peaks. Barda. Barda, meaning white ones, were nature spirits in the folklore of the Albania. They were described as formless white beings living in the ground. Housewives would leave sugar and sweet cakes on the ground for them to ensure their kindness. Interesting, isn't it? Bari, meaning feisty, is one of the many dwarfs who was named in the Voluspa, but Bari was also be one of the sons of Ivaldi as well, it is said. Bariaus or Bariaua. From the folklore of Tub Tub, the Wagga Wagga people of Malaysia, comes the Bariau, a race of benign and shy nature spirits. Keeping far from humans, they live deep in the forest in the trunks of ancient trees. It was said they were incapable of making any sort of water-going vessel, and on occasion they would borrow a person's canoe. The Bariu abhor the very thought of being seen by human eyes, and if they were ever spotted, they disappeared instantly, as if they were never there. So the Basa Andre, also known as Basandre, this is the fairy lord Basque, Basa Andre, wild woman, the best known as being the wife of Basa Juan, a sorceress. She was not necessarily evil, but her actions and motivations were always supportive of her husband and their continued comfort and existence. When a story took place in a remote mountain area, Basa Andre was typically described as a beautiful woman sitting upon a rock just inside of a cave, combing out her long hair with a golden comb, much like a mermaid. Although in none of the stories she or her husband portrayed as a danger to the church or Christianity, the couple both hate the sound of church bells and will flee from their pealing. And then we go to the Bassadone. In northern Italy, there was a species of follette known as the Bassadone, woman kisser. They glided and drifted in the wind, and they stole kisses from women as they drifted by. The basilisk, also known as the Regulus. A basilisk was a highly poisonous fairy animal from Greek mythology. It was so lethal, it could kill not just by looking at its prey, but also by breathing on or touching them. Described as having the body of a large golden-coloured snake with two arms protruding from the top of its head, the species of injurious fairy hates mankind. Although the basilisk originated in Greek mythology, it did not figure much into it. Pliny the Elder, a Roman author, army and naval commander, natural philosopher, and naturalist, wrote of the basilisk in his book, and that was Naturalis Historia, and he described it was a small creature native to the province of Cyrenaica. It walked upright on a set of rear legs and had a white diamond-shaped mark on its head, and was only about 12 inches long. So, even though it is in Greek, it didn't come out until later on. Batiae, a nymph from the mythology of ancient Greece and Rome, and one of the naiads who was born to King Obalus of Sparta. And then the Bushan, also the Bockenbogan and the Buckhorn. The Bushan was a type of extremely hairy hobgoblin from the folklore of England. It had been known to be both benevolent and injurious. These fairies could become attached to a person or a family, stay with them for great periods of time, sometimes giving assistance when there was need, and other times being overly mischievous for no apparent cause. Baumber, one of the many dwarves named in the Voluspa poems. Baummiesel, ass of the trees, was a type of goblin from the folklore of Germany, and he lived in the trees of the forest. Obviously. Bavor, sometimes two R's, sometimes one R, the Grumbler, and he's another one of the dwarfs named in the famous Voluspa. Bayard. This was the enchanted fairy horse. To the French hero, Maurice Renaudot was quested and won him. The horse was said to understand the human language and possess supernatural intelligence, loyalty, power, and speed. Bayard, the beautiful white charger, was able to bear the weight of 3 riders and still perform perfectly in combat as a war horse. So he's a very famous fairy horse. Basiloshtich, a banshee from the wind folklore of eastern Germany, means God's plaint, was described as looking like a tiny long-haired woman. The fairy only appeared beneath the window of someone who was about to die, and she sat there and wept. We've done the Beyond Knee and the Beyond Sea because we did that in the other episodes, so we're not going to do them, guys, because they've already been done. The Bec Fóla, Irish mythology. Small fortune it means. Was the fairy queen of Tara, the wife of King Diamete, and the mortal lover of Flann Uair Feadach, a fairy king. The queen was desirous of her foster son, Crimthan, but this would be tryst cost the king his throne, making the people question who was the rightful ruler. When attempting to assassinate Crimthan, the lovely Bacfola met Flann and spent an evening with him on his enchanted island. Luilne enjoying a blissful affair. As time passes differently in Fairyland than it does anywhere else, she was able to enjoy herself. When she returned, no one suspected the affair was with her new lover, let alone for how long it had been going on. However, soon after her return, Flann Uair Feadach returned to Tara, and whisking her away, they went off forever to Fairyland. Bekuma. Possibly one of the Tuatha De Danann, Bekuma cheated on her husband, one of the sons of Manannan, god of the sea. When the liaison was discovered, Manannan declared she be burned at the stake or set adrift in the sea, choosing the latter. Bekuma was cast out in a small boat, never again to return to a magical realm, and forever denied access to the spirits. When the recently widowed king of Ireland, Conn, first laid eyes upon Bekuma, he fell deeply in love. The pair quickly wed, but soon after Ireland began to fail. The fertility of the land dwindled. This was seen by everyone, save the king as the goddess sovereignty, not supporting the union. One day, when Bekuma defeated Art, Conn's son, in a game of chess, she sent him to retrieve a spirit for her by the name of Dulucaem. After a great adventure, Art was able to do so, and in the process fell in love with the powerful spirit and sorceress. When the pair returned home, Dulucaem was able to force Bakuma to leave court. In some versions of the story, she returned to a small ship and drifted off to parts unknown, while in others she landed in England, and there created and fostered the hatred between England and Ireland. The Bedia Dari means good people. It's a euphemism referring to little people, of the fairies in Malay, people of West Malaysia. The Befana, La Befana Lestrega Levicia, meaning the witch. Even Saint Befana, meaning the saint. A good house fairy from the folklore of Italy. Befana was usually described as looking like an old hag. However, on the 12th night, the feast of Epiphany, January the 6th, she took on the appearance of a kindly old grandmother. Her name was mispronunciation of the word Epiphania. Epiphany. Befind or befind. The Befind was a species of fairy from Celtic lore. In Irish lore, Befind was a singular entity, one of the Sihi, and one of the 3 guardian fae who attend the birth of each child in order to give it a gift of an ability or character, as well as to make predictions of its life. It was likely she was once an Irish goddess of birth. Befind was likely the progenitor of the fairy godmother. So that's what she basically, that's where the fairy godmother comes for. It's the liking of that type of fae, basically. Behir variations are Bethia, meaning bear. In the Highlands of Scotland, the Behir was said to be one of the group of fearsome spirits associated with lightnings and snakes. lived in caves and corries and kept away from humans as much as possible. They were rarely seen, but when sighted it was during the summer nights when lightning strikes. The word Bahir was used to mean both lightning and serpent. The Bahir were also one of the Fuath, a collective name for malicious and monstrous water fae in Scottish folklore. Belphoebe, a fairy known great talent of healing, and was seen as the epitome of beauty, of womanhood, chastity, and purity. She and her twin sister, Amaret, were born the daughters of the nymph Chrysoganni. Their father was the warm sunlight that fell on the sleeping Chrysoganni after she bathed one afternoon. Born in the woods, the infants were found by the goddesses Diana and Venus as they were searching the woods for the lost god Cupid. And Belphoebe was taken and raised by Diana. Ben Binnack. So they were goblins who lived in Scotland. Likely all sprites, Ben Binnack were nearly immortal, except for a vulnerable mole on his chest. It was said he beats his wife so badly her wailing and screams kept the neighbours awake all night. James Gray, a Highlander, heard the sad cries one night and put an end to the Ben Binnack forever by shooting him with an arrow right in the centre of his mole. She was so thankful for being rescued, she attached herself to local families. Unfortunately, goblin greed knows no bounds, and one day an enraged household doused her with boiling water, causing her to flee, screaming and to never return. Well, that's really sad for the fairy, I think, right? Bendith Imamu, also known as one of the Till Teg, usually a member of the unseelie court. It's also a species of brownies, though it just depends. Glamorganshire, Counties, Wales. Mother who lived in this country had to be especially careful with their infants because the Bendithi Mamu were known to steal children and replace them with their own. So these were the fairies that could be responsible for the changelings. Bear Baroka, living in the swamps of the Philippines. Now, to me, it's pronounced Bear Baroka, but I think if you're looking at it in the Philippines, maybe it would be pronounced Barbaroka. I'm not sure. But anyway, they're a species of cannibalistic water fairy, and they are renowned in their predation on the Apayo people who live in that river area. The fairies would move to a small pond or section of swamp and drink up so much water fish could easily be seen swimming near the surface. Fishermen are then lured to the area by the prospect of fast and plentiful catch. Then, these fairies release the water, drowning or knocking out their prey. Once their trap is sprung, they drag their food down to the watery depths where it's consumed. The birchta. So, it's in a lot of different folklores, the birchta, and it was once worshipped as the earth goddess by both northern and southern Germany. But she was said to be a prophet regardless, but depending on the role, she played a sort of role in the luring determinations of fate and such. But then again, she also had she could be described as a hag, but some would describe her as a beautiful woman. Her appearance changed, and with the rise of Christianity, that's when her appearance became more darker, and all her sort of everything around her became a lot darker as well, and I mean really dark after that. The Beregini, or the Boginki, little goddesses, benevolent water spirits in Russian folklore associated with rivers and streams. Little is really known about them beyond their name, but they lived in the banks on the river. Sacrificial offerings were believed to be thrown into the river to appease them. The Berezhinia. The Berezhinias were very obscure and little known and understood fairy. First mentioned in the 15th century in Novgorod, the manuscript, the Lay of St. Gregory, the Theologian of the Idols. The source, heavily edited and retranslated since the 12th century, makes a claim vampires and Berezhinias were the first creatures worshipped by ancient Slavs, a form of dualistic animism practiced in their most ancient times. Although the text does not offer any details on them, it has speculated since their name is Slavic word for a riverbank, so they could be some sort of benevolent mermaid. Berg people. Said to resemble dwarfs, the Berg people of Dutch lore was a species of fairy, benign troll, often appearing to humans as a toad. Interesting. The Begeist. Swiss lore. The Begeist was a type of fairy who lived in mines, particularly iron mines. The Begeist were described as looking like elderly white men sporting a long white beard, wearing a red coat and a wide-brimmed hat. Originally, offerings were made to local Begeists as a means of seeking permission before digging. However, after the introduction of Christianity, these fairies were blamed for mining disasters and then were said to be in league with the devil. Berkias, the son of Arkaven, the Dev Berkias of Persian law, was described as being as large as mountains, with a body covered in bristling needle-like hair. His black-faced hosted eyes as red as blood, and two large ball-like tusks protruded from his mouth. Pigeons nested in his beard. He had command of his father's army. Berling. In Norse mythology, Berling Handspike was one of the Brisingamen dwarfs who created the prize necklace for the beautiful goddess Freya. Beru, a sea nymph, one of the Nereids, was born of the goddess Aphrodite and Adonis, according to ancient Greek legend. Bertha. A fairy from German folklore, Bertha appeared in the castles of nobility, quietly slipped into nurseries and gently rocked infants to sleep. However, she was a nightmare and terrorized naughty children. She was described as being dressed in snowy white clothes with a massive set of keys hanging from her belt and down her side. It was likely she was once a nature goddess, Bertha, who, in the advent of Christianity, was reduced in power and status to fairy. Several noble German families claim to be her ancestral descendants. The Bethen, or the Beden. There's a triad of female fertility spirits. The Bethen of German law were associated with birth, fertility, and good fortune. After the introduction of Christianity, they were absorbed into just local traditions. The Betikahan, a nature spirit or faun from the folklore of southern India. It was said to hunt animals at the Nilgiri Hills. Bia, or Baya, a river spirit from the folklore of the Arkan people of Ghana. Bianca. Bianca is one of the fates. There's many of the fates. Usually they say there's three, but if you look through time, there's a lot of fairy fates, and they have sort of the running on past, present, and sort of future, if you get what I mean. Bikala, or Bikaia, Pendevil, a domestic fairy from the lore of the Mari people, Russia, a guardian of livestock. He shared this responsibility with fellow fae Bika Oza, Penmaster. Bikaia had his favourite animal, and at night, just like the pixies of England, would take it out for a ride, returning it back to its stall or pen, covered in sweat. Okay. Biddy Early we've already done. If you remember Biddy Early, she was a witch, but was also said to be some sort of fairy as well, and she worked with the fairies or whatever. But yeah, we've done that. Biasol, a goblin or kobold from the Saxony region of Germany. A Biasol was a household fae who made his home in the cellar of inns. In exchange for his own style of beer, he would gladly clean all the bottles, jugs, and anything else that you needed. Bild is, or build, now it depends how you pronounce it. I will pronounce it Bild, but he was one of the many dwarfs named in the Voluspa. Billinger, twin. Another one of the dwarfs named in the famous Voluspa. And that is going to end our part, well, this part on the bees, because there's still many more to go anyway. So I hope you enjoy listening to these. I do. I love listening and learning about all the different fae of the world. It's very interesting. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit that like, Share if you can, and also consider subscribing. And please, if it's not too much trouble, kindly leave a comment below. Many blessings. Wysteria, energy, twister.